Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. I'm calling the November 20, oh no, we're going to go with county first. Tom?
Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the November 20th, 2024 County Commissioners meeting at 5:30 p.m. The announcements are that the County Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded. And the next item on the agenda is for public comment for items not on our agenda. Is there anybody here to speak on any county-related matters that are not on our agenda? Ms. Chalk, I believe you're probably for Select Board for public comment. This is for County Commissioners. Yeah, no problem. Yep, okay. Item number 4, new business. I believe there's no new business, Erica? Okay. Item number 5, approval of minutes and warrants. Minutes from September 25th, 2024, and approval of payroll and treasury warrants for October and November 2024. What's the pleasure of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Second, moved by Matt, a second by Dawn. We are all here this evening. Malcolm's not online?
Yep.
No, so we're all here this evening. We can vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. None opposed. That passed unanimously, 4-0. Public hearings. First is a public hearing to consider an order of taking by eminent domain a portion of Ames Avenue shown on plan of land entitled Roadway Acquisition and Disposition Plan in Nantucket of portions of unconstructed New Hampshire Avenue, Massachusetts Avenue, California Avenue, dated March 6, 2023, prepared by Bracken Engineering, Inc., and recorded with Nantucket County Register of Deeds, plan number 2024-7, pursuant to MGL Chapter 79 and Chapter 82, and vote on Article 80 of 2013 Annual Town Meeting. I'll open the public hearing, and I believe that Tracy, our real estate specialist, the Town and County's real estate specialist, is here to introduce this item.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Tracy McDonald, real estate specialist. I'm presenting tonight a request to the county commissioners to authorize and execute an order of taking of the fee in portions of Ames Avenue, shown as parcels 1 through 5 on plan 2024-7, approved by Article 80 at the 2013 annual town meeting and pursuant to special legislation the town received, now known as Chapter 153 of the Acts of 2024. This taking is related to the town's flexibility and coastal resilience planning for this area.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none online. Any commissioners' comments on this item? Seeing none. Any motion?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Moved by Brooks, second by Dawn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. That passed unanimously, 4-0. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me.
We need the motion to approve.
Is there moved by Brooke, seconded by Dawn? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. That passes 4-0. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Next item, number 7, is commissioners' reports, comments. Is there any commissioners' reports or comments? Seeing none, I'll close that item and look for a motion to adjourn county commissioners meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Matt, second by Dawn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. County commissioners is closed, so throw it over to Brooke for select board.
Okay, so I'm going to call to order the November 20th Select Board meeting at 5:35 p.m. The agenda is accepted as amended today to add a new business item in case people had printed their agendas early. And then we'll go to announcements. Libby?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded. There is no select board meeting next week, Wednesday, November 27th, and town offices will be closed next Thursday, November 28th, in observance of Thanksgiving. And we have some Committee vacancies coming up: Capital Program Committee, Council for Human Services, Council on Aging, Cultural Council, Real Estate Assessment Committee, Town of Nantucket Scholarship Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals. The information is all online, and the applications are as well, and we hope people will take a look and consider applying.
Okay, any select board announcements or comments? Okay, all quiet. Next, we have follow-up on public comment questions from prior select board meetings. So at the last meeting, there were a number of questions asked by Veronica Bonet about the wind turbine blade damages information form. And there is a response in writing on the public comment page on the website, but I wanted to clarify for the community that this is not a claim form for damages. It is an estimate of loss, which is part of our effort to quantify economic losses in the community in our negotiations with Vineyard Wind regarding recovery of damage costs. So it is not a legal filing of any kind. It is simply an opportunity for us to get input, so we have an estimate of what we should be asking for from GE and Vineyard Wind on the losses front. So I would encourage anyone in the community who has experienced and can quantify financial loss but as an estimate. There's no proof needed. It's really just to give us an idea, and whether that's loss that happened in July or the summer, or loss that's anticipated based on, for instance, the damage of people's understanding or their willingness to come to Nantucket that might affect future short-term rentals, anything like that. We want to collect as many ideas, and so that form is still up online. We had originally sort of set a closing date to encourage people to get to it, but I think that there's been some confusion about what it is and what it is not. So it does not obligate anyone legally to participate in an official claim process should one be established in the future. So it's really just informational purposes. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
let me follow up. And it's not guaranteeing any money.
No.
And it's not just the wind blades. It could be negotiations or litigation on South Coast or something else. I mean, we need to have we'd like to have some basis for claims that we may be making in the future. So it's important. I have had a lot of people tell me they don't want to do it. And part of the reason they don't want to do it is they're worried that it'll become an article, it'll become a discussion point, it'll hurt the island. We are not taking these and waving your business around or your name around. This is being used for informational purposes to help the island. And so, but I understand their hesitancy. A lot of the businesses are reliant on the island being viewed as a important, summer place. And if we start to lose that, what happens? So I do think, but anyway, fill it in, please. If I really hope people give us an idea.
Can I just put something out there? It's just at the very beginning stages what this incident and the turbines in general are doing to the value of Nantucket in terms of property values. And we're just starting to hear it in the real estate world of owners being angry about it and just really not feeling like Nantucket is as protected and as pristine as it has always been. So if you start to think about what we're talking about in terms of the impact, which is way more than what we ever anticipated with the renderings we were given back in 2018 when we negotiated the agreement with Vineyard Wind, we have almost $35 billion in residential real estate on this island. Just a small fraction of that is going to be an enormous amount of money if we see the impact over 30 years of a drop in value due to this.
And then there were also questions about the communications with Bessie around enforcement of Vineyard Wind, and we've been working closely with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and offices of our federal legislators to amplify our concerns about the process of enforcement at the Vineyard Wind 1 project. Our collective position is that no blade turbine activity should be permitted until there's an adequate analysis of the risks associated with the GE Vernova Halide X blades. So that's ongoing communications, trying to get our voice heard up through the federal government actively, and I'll keep the community posted as that process goes along. And then Meredith Lepre also, was that from? Yeah, no, that was from the week before. Okay, so that's it for follow-up on public comment. And now we'll open public comment for items not on the agenda. And so I am, the item later in the agenda, which is follow-up from last night's meeting, I won't be taking public comment at that time. So if you want to make a comment now, I'll take a comment during public comment on that, if that makes sense. Spruce?
Burton Balkind, for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a personal comment and a comment as the president of the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy, if that's okay. My first personal comment is I want to thank you and the board for the public comment system we have in place now. It's transparent, it's very informative, and it helps having it on not only on the videos, but also the written responses on the website. So I want to say thank you. It's made a difference. Now, as president of the Coastal Conservancy, I wanted to bring to your attention that there is an enforcement order against the town via 63 Baxter Road, who did some illegal work, or supposedly illegal work that Jeff at Natural Resources Department can probably fill you in if you didn't hear about it. That enforcement order was for the property at 63 and for the town. And so reason why I'm bringing this up because the select board entered into an MOU with SPPF. The owner of 63 Baxter Road is one of the officers at SPPF. And this is also in the scope of the NOI expansion that you have entered into a memorandum of understanding with. I guess the reason why I'm saying this, I want the public to know that this is happening, and also I want the board to think about how we move forward in a way that is cooperative and but also is trying to follow the rules of the Wetlands Protection Acts and what is good and best for the town. I think that's about all I have. I have a lot more to say, but I think I'll save it for another time. So I want to say thank you very much for the time.
I'm going to go to Jesse Sandoli online.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, Jesse Sandoli on behalf of Keep Nantucket Wild. Just want to make a few comments tonight about Vineyard Wind. And, for everybody who's just getting involved in this effort now, I think it's really important to talk about the fact that there's 5 total projects under the scope of Vineyard Wind, being Vineyard Wind 1, the one that's under construction now, and the one that where we saw the blade break this summer. 2 more projects under New England Wind, and 2 more projects under Vineyard Northeast. Now, the reason that we've been so adamant about trying to get out of the Good Neighbor Agreement is because if we don't, we are never going to be able to have any kind of public discourse on this issue, on any of these additional projects like we did last night. Nantucket is effectively silenced because of the Good Neighbor Agreement. We can't speak out against it. We can't come to a conclusion as a community as what's best for the island on any of these projects. So for that reason, we continue to feel very strongly that we need to get out of the Good Neighbor Agreement so that we can go on offense rather than really not even playing defense and just sitting here letting these projects happen when the community clearly does not want them after what happened last night. Again, as I stated, previous meeting, the government has disclosed, BOEM has disclosed, which is the agency fast tracking these projects, that even if every turbine on the East Coast were to be built out, it would not have any cumulative effect on climate change. We obviously have a climate issue, but they are saying that this is not going to have any cumulative effect on climate change. Very important for everybody to know. Also wanted to inform the board that we have 10 new coalition members, Nantucket businesses, since last week, bringing the total to 166 Nantucket businesses. In addition to that, we have over 2,000 signatures now between Nantucketers and summertime tax-paying residents. We feel strongly in our coalition that the board was duped into signing this agreement back in 2020 when it was signed. As many people have acknowledged, we did not have all the facts at the time. The renderings that were presented to you all were very insufficient, and we do not fault you for entering into the agreement at that time. However, with all the abundance of information that we have now, we feel that it would be prudent to exit the agreement as soon as possible, lawyer up with an attorney that is not a specialist in Section 106 and is a specialist in litigation, and do whatever we can do to fight these projects and do what's best for Nantucket. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jesse. Mary?
Mary Chalk. 2024 has been a record-setting year for sea mammal strandings in this ocean of southern New England, according to IFA. They don't know what is causing this shocking uptick rate of mortality, but we do know what it is. So the reason I'm giving this background is because this island has been the enemy of the whales for hundreds of years. First, we killed the North Atlantic right whale for their oil to light our lamps. Now we are trading the lives of the whales for electricity to light our homes. And worse, the town has accepted cash payments and are looking the other way, while Vineyard Wind sought and obtained its second incidental take authorization to harass, injure, deafen up to 24 whales during pile driving, which has commenced last month. We should, out of the obligation to save this whale because our island led the nation in slaughtering them for profit, be the first to stand up. We should be guardians of the remnants that seek refuge off our shore. BOEM admits collectively the offshore wind projects will not significantly impact global warming. So we can give Vineyard Wind's money back and start leading the nation in fighting for the survival of the North Atlantic right whale. We owe that to this whale. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Veronica Bonet online.
Hello, thank you. And thank you for letting people speak on this very important issue that is impacting everybody on the island. I just wanted to follow up. I didn't think that my question last night to Will Cook was answered, and given the information that I understand, it felt somewhat deliberate. As Jesse mentioned, there are many other projects out there, and at least 5 of which we have agreed to in the Good Neighbor Agreement. Vineyard Wind did not state in their permitting documents, or BOEM didn't state in the permitting documents for Vineyard Wind what the level of adverse effect is. But it was stated in the record of decision for that company's second project, New England Wind. And it was stated as major adverse effect. Well, a major adverse effect to a National Historic Landmark is a big problem for a developer. And it requires that BOEM give the utmost attention to that issue, and that they mitigate it, not with money, but with actual protections to the historic landmark. In this case, the only thing you can do is move them further out and move them out of the view. And so we didn't ask for that because we weren't there. We didn't have a seat at the table. We were withdrawn. And now you're looking for money from South Coast Wind, who in their environmental statements is able to factually say they do not have a major adverse effect on Nantucket. Their effect is only moderate because they are able to compare it to other projects that will be built in the reasonably foreseeable future. Hello, that is New England Wind that has the major adverse effect finding on it, and that Nantucket did not come to the table and say that's not okay. But it's not too late. Vineyard Wind, we let all of the time go by without the town taking legal action against Vineyard Wind, and that window has closed. After 2 years, you can't sue a federally permitted project. But New England Wind was only permitted in April of 2024. They plan to begin construction early next year, and Nantucket needs to sit down with, if it's not Cultural Heritage Partners, other lawyers, and come up with a better strategy for protecting our historic landmark. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Madeline Hay?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Madeline Hay here. I am a coalition member with Keep Nantucket Wild and Act for Whales. So I'm just basically underscoring what my fellow coalition members have said, which is the fact that the Good Neighbor Agreement is just not, it doesn't behoove us as a community to remain within it. Personally, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people in the community, we as a community are not sitting on the right side of history regarding our stance with the Good Neighbor Agreement. You know, a lot of other coastal communities are looking at us right now in regards to how we handle this disaster of a development occurring. And so that's a really important point to keep in mind. I'd also like to address cultural heritage partners. No mitigations regarding South Coast Wind will suffice. Developments of any nature that continue forward in regards to offshore wind are not going to help the community. I don't believe cultural heritage partners, and neither do most of the coalition, believe that they have our best interests at heart. We really should pursue another law firm. Doesn't seem like they guided us very well in the Good Neighbor Agreement, so how could we trust them to continue to guide us forward? Therefore, Don, Matt, Malcolm, Thomas, Brooke, we really urge you to act and push back, exit the Good Neighbor Agreement, and fight for this community. We really commend you for serving the island. We know not everyone would, would get up and serve like you all have. So we respect that, but we need you to fight harder for us in our future. And it's imminent. The time is now. We don't have much more time. I mean, the fact that they continued to pile drive the bases for these turbines, even after a blade broke this summer, which caused excessive damage and is yet to be repaired, it's not okay. The fact that there wasn't a lawsuit over this is pretty unfathomable. Lastly, I would just really like to commend every single islander that spoke in opposition to the industrialization of our oceans last night, as well as in all meetings prior. Your voices are so powerful and they are heard. We need more people to speak up and join this movement and spread the word. And again, what we are witnessing right now with the coalitions of Keep Nantucket Wild and Act for Whales is a grassroots effort that is no different than any other great movement in history that turned the tide on corruption and the destruction of something sacred. And that sacred thing being our island and our ocean. There really comes a time, everyone, for common sense, and it's time to wake up. We have over, what Jesse stated, 166 island businesses and probably over 2,000 people and counting opposed to these offshore wind developments in writing. And the writing is on the walls in big red spray paint: stop the industrialization of our oceans and exit the Good Neighbor Agreement. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Madeline. Amy DeCibio?
Hi, sorry about that. I couldn't figure out how to unmute. I do want to underscore everything that the last several speakers have said. In fact, every person that has spoken on this, I would just like to underscore. their comments. And again, to reiterate, I do think it was nice that we were, not more than nice, it was beneficial for us to have an open dialogue in the meeting that we had last night with respect to South Coast Wind. But the big elephant in the room are all of the Vineyard Wind projects that fall under the Good Neighbor Agreement. And I know you guys don't like talking about it. I think it is time for everyone on the select board to say that we need to move away from it, and the community will get behind you. I don't think people are looking to chastise anybody for getting involved in it, but the community is getting frustrated that you're not hearing us, that we haven't left it. It is honestly baffling to everyone, I believe. Why are we still in it? And the reasons we get are that it's giving us a seat at the table. But I think the real truth here is that we don't have a seat at the table. When we signed the Good Neighbor Agreement, we walked away from the Section 106 projects, the 106 process for 5 projects that will total about 350 turbines that are getting ever taller in height. And there were no height restrictions or numbers of turbines that were restricted in the fabulous Good Neighbor Agreement. There's nothing that mentions how tall they can be. When we had discussions about the Good Neighbor Agreement, they were, half the size of what some of these will be when they're over 1,300 feet. So I think it's, we do not have a seat at the table. We may have a seat having a discussion with Vineyard Wind, but we don't have it with the permitting agencies. The decision tree last night, I think, was very misleading, where they're giving us 2 options that are either take the money now or come back and ask for more money. Money does not mitigate this. There are a lot of other options, and Section 106 is just one part of the big story here. There are huge environmental issues that impact Nantucket, impact our harbor, impact our beaches around it, impact all the ocean, the channel, everything else. There are economic issues that are vast, that impact our tourism business, our property values, and not to mention the very simple environmental issue, as Mary Chalk mentioned earlier, about a critically endangered species. Nantucket's better than this. And we do not have a voice at the table. I think we need to all stop pretending that that's the truth. We walked away from the table. We're not even in the building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Helen Parker?
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Is there a way to get a picture on this?
No, ma'am, not as an attendee, no.
Okay. Yes, my name's Helen Parker. My husband, my deceased husband, Riggs Parker, and I have been since 2008 trying to educate internationally to spread the truth about this offshore and onshore industrial wind. I'm not going to try to do that at this point, but I am imploring you to do the slightest unbiased research, and you will find without a doubt there is no reason to support this industry. It is purely for monetary gain. It does nothing for the environment. It does nothing for humanity. What we need for humanity is stovetops fueled with propane canisters to bring the undeveloped nations out of their poverty. And instead, we as a rich nation have been saying we're only going to support renewables. This is an absolute travesty. And as I say, I have been trying since 2008 to get this word out. I am absolutely thrilled to see some of what was made testimony to last evening at your public hearing, and I thank you for the public hearing. It reminded me of Martha's Vineyard Edgartown Conservation Commission, the fishermen's meeting on June 27th, I believe, 2019, which went on for 5.5 hours, had the real experts there. They knew, the fishermen, they knew what was going to come down the pike. And a big part of the reason that people haven't tuned in is the media, the local media, as well as the national and international media. And even now, I mean, for whatever it's been, 15 years, the 2 vineyard papers were quiet on this, quiet. let everything come under the table. And even now, after the blade disaster in July, I read in the vineyard papers that the debris is washing up on Nantucket shores to a lesser degree on the vineyard shores. Well, my husband and I moved to Newport in 2023, and that blade debris is coming up on our Newport beaches. It's coming up on the Long Island beaches. We still aren't getting word of the disaster that this is. So, not to belabor the point, just please look into this. What industrial wind means is that my time?
Yes, that's your time. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yep. John Walker?
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thanks again for allowing these public comments and all of your service. I do sincerely appreciate it. I just want to reinforce, what I've said in the last couple of meetings, that local opposition combined with a good legal team, has stopped some of these projects, both Cape May and Cape Wind. I would encourage the board to look at those cases. They were both delayed and ultimately canceled due, again, to local opposition and a good legal team. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that we have a new administration coming in 60 days that are against offshore wind. And I think that if we can buy some time and delay anything that's going on right now, whether it's South Coast or whether it's, what's going on with Vineyard Wind, we may have a lot of good news coming our way in terms of the new administration being opposed to offshore wind. And I think that I was disappointed in Will Cook's response about his knowledge of what that could mean. He obviously has to have some contacts in Washington about what this is going to mean for potentially a new head of BOEM and other people in the administration that would help our cause. Finally, I do think, again, that the board should consider teaming up with these local opposition groups, Keep Nantucket Wild, Act for Whales. We heard last night some people from Martha's Vineyard. We have these Native American tribes and the Civic League, again, which I have had some very good success in talking to the presidents about joining forces in opposition. Thanks very much for your time. And again, appreciate all that you guys are doing.
Thanks, John. Val's next. Jesse, our policy on public comment is 3 minutes on any particular topic. So if you are planning to talk again about wind farms, I won't be calling on you, but I'm going to have Val go now because she's in the room.
Thank you, Val Oliver. I just want to say and reiterate, thank you for letting us have this moment in public, which we've so desired for so long. Thank you to the public who has spoken about this really important issue. And just to reiterate, it's really important going forward for us to have a voice at the beginning of the process rather than at the end when it's getting wrapped up. So thanks for listening. Oh, and I know what it's like to sit on a board and be underappreciated, so thank you for your service. I noticed you have a lot of vacancies, and that's probably why. Thank you.
Jesse, did you want to speak on a different topic?
I don't believe I used my full 3 minutes. If I just could have 20 seconds to just reiterate a couple of numbers.
Jesse, I wasn't keeping track of the time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't use my full 3 minutes, but just for a moment, and I do appreciate you having me on for a second time.
Go ahead.
In terms of those 5 Vineyard Wind projects, as Amy just stated, we are only looking at the first 62 turbines with Vineyard Wind. So with the 350 turbines total coming under the projects that are under the Good Neighbor Agreement, we're looking at only about 10% of what's coming. So there's only 30 something out there right now. It's going to total 62. We are only looking at 10% of the total that are covered under the Good Neighbor Agreement. And those as Amy and Veronica said, were rated as severe or significant impacts to Nantucket. So we really need to consider how many more turbines we have coming just with Vineyard Wind. That's
Okay.
all. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks,
what you guys
Jason.
are doing.
Okay. Yep. Diane Coombs?
Okay, thank you, Brooke. I when I was on the HCC, I sat as a member of BOEM and the turbines. It was startling to me to see that BOEM answered no questions. You asked a question, it never got answered. They said they'd be back to you in a week or whatever. And they never got back. I was on it for 40 years. So that is a concern. The lawyer that worked on supposedly on our side said what he said, and that was it. We lost the ability to speak for ourselves. And with the conglomeration of towns and states that are involved in this, if we could become a group and have a complete circle around what's being done, and all the financial and the mental and the killing of our animals, it would be so important. The BOEM is frightening. They have the control to shut everybody up. And we were told specifically, Holly was there, that it was kept under wraps. It wasn't to be discussed after the meetings. So just as a warning. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Madeline, since you've already spoken, I'm going to close public comment now and move on to new business. We have a request from the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board to increase the bay scallop bushel limit for commercial scallopers from 5 bushels to 6 bushels for the remainder of the 2024-2025 bay scallop season. The board, and I'm going to have Andy give us a rundown on this.
Before you do that, I just want to note that the reason why this is under new business is because it was not reasonably anticipated 48 hours before the meeting by the chair.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Andy Lowell, Chairman of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. I can't thank you enough for seeing this, hearing us at short notice. And we really needed a portion of the season, which only started on November 1st, to be able to assess what's in the harbor for harvest. So we had a very productive meeting last night with all involved. We had a full board, our 7 members at SHAB, and the town biologist, Tara Riley, and Jeff Carlson from NRD, and several fishermen were involved as well. And this has actually been discussion we have had off and on for many years. As you know, the state limit is 10 bushel per commercial fisherman. That is restricted to 5 bushel locally. So that's why we're here before you asking to adjust it to 6. And the reason being is there are a large amount of adult harvestable scallops available in the harbor, and there are very few fishermen fishing for them. I believe there are about 20 boats fishing currently, maybe 30 to 35 fishermen total, which keeps the bushel count rather low. We try not to base any of our decisions totally on monetary reasons. I was told when I got on the board 10 years ago that the economics are not part of our purview. I haven't seen that in writing, but I would like to say that with the fragility of the fishery, not having too many fishermen involved, some aging out, probably more aging out than are
new fishermen coming in. We at SHAB, our goal is to see the fishery remain vibrant as possibly can be. And that's also difficult with the competition of working on land where there are much more lucrative jobs available. So it's really a passion for the fishermen that are left doing this. And as you know as well, the Nantucket Bay scallop is trademarked and fairly famous throughout the country, and we'd like to try to keep it that way. Our number one initiative also is the health of our harbor. I'm not going to be here as a mouthpiece for fishermen who simply want to get more of a catch to collect more of a paycheck. These scallops, adult scallops, whatever, are not fished at the end of this season will basically rot and die in the harbor. So it's always made sense to try to harvest as many of these adult scallops as we can. I think it's reasonable to ask for one more bushel. The bushel count over the past few years has been quite low, increased a little bit over just last year in comparison to the year before. I don't think this is going to make a huge difference on the end result bushel count. It all depends on how many fishermen keep going after January. The short notice does have a bit to do with the marketing. They're most popular for Thanksgiving and Christmas for folks wanting to consume these scallops for meals. And our reason for coming to you so quickly was that you don't meet next week. And if we had to wait another week for this decision to be made, basically we're almost into Christmas, and the fishermen felt at that point it's almost a moot point to make the change. So if you have any other questions, we do have, this was a unanimous vote last night from our board. We did have positive reaction from both the town biologist and our D director, and they're here tonight. We have a few active fishermen here tonight as well, one being a board member as well, Mr. DaCosta, and if you have any more questions in detail, I'm sure they can be answered. Thank you.
Okay, questions from the board? Matt?
Yeah, I would like to hear from Jeff. I would like to, hear, and first off, I think this should be coming to us as written, in my opinion, with some sort of standard, something behind it, so we understand. So we're not just making it up. We have a really good board, and we trust you now. What is it going to be like in the future? Like, I think that we need to have a little bit more of a process behind it. We found out today at 1:30 in the agenda meeting. That's not, that has the potential to not be good government. And so the questions I would have is, what is the staff recommendation on this? Are we all on board? Is there anything that we should be thinking about, on this issue, et cetera? How was it derived? What voices were involved at your level? Are we talking to, all the fishermen plus the buyers plus whoever? How do you come about to this? Should be part of, I think, what we're getting on this recommendation in the future. But I would love to hear from Jeff. Thanks.
Matt, if I could quickly, it's uncomfortable for me to be in this position to ask you at such late an hour. But once again, for the entire board, we're very grateful for you hearing this. Thank you.
No, that's fine.
Sure. So Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. I'll actually probably turn most of this over to Tara Riley. She can explain this far better than me. And I too apologize for the shortness of this. It's something that's been discussed. Obviously, we just talked about this regulatory change for this bushel limit adjustment ability fairly recently. So it's been a topic of conversation on the docks and the fishermen and at SHAB a little bit. I think this is something we've been discussing in Natural Resources for a number of years now, and why we've been really focused at doing our benthic surveys and kind of our annual scallop assessments so we could get to these moments and say, we believe we have stock that we will be having a healthy fishery and increase or potentially decrease. Do you want to add more to that a bit while we're going? I agree, process always is something that can be improved. And I think it's a little bit of a learning experience for everyone with a new style of regulation, but I'll let Tara talk about the fishery a little bit more.
Sure, thank you. Tara Riley, Shellfish and Aquatic Resource Manager. We knew this was coming. We knew it last year that the fishery could have sustained a raise in the bushel limit. We've been doing these surveys for a long time. We have a lot of data since 2006 on how many adults are in the harbor each year. And so just for context, the amount of adults in the harbor this year from our surveys is equivalent to what we had in 2012. And in 2012, we had around 200 permits with around 97 people actively fishing, and we pulled out around 18,000 bushels. So right now, we have 25 boats going. The fishery can definitely sustain a 1 bushel increase, and not, probably could sustain more than that too. So it's just, there's not a lot of participation in the fishery like we had in the past. So the bushels don't, the final bushel count don't really reflect what's in the harbor anymore.
And what you're giving there is the kind of things that I think would be helpful in the future for, if we say we project it can hold this, we have this many guys, therefore, that's the type of thing that we see that it's a no-brainer,
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make this,
It's a quick turnaround for all of us. So.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. Before you go, Bobby, any other questions from the board? I would just comment the same. Obviously, we have a new regulation that we allowed, and the first time around isn't always perfect. But I would concur that maybe SHAB could create a checklist or a policy going forward after this one, and that's just what I would. Bobby, did you want to say something?
Yeah, a couple things. One, unfortunately, because you're not meeting next week, is why we're here today, because that will take us into December. And we're really trying to get through the Thanksgiving market. Maybe the solution is that we change our SHAB meetings from Tuesdays to Thursdays so that we have time to get you paperwork on Friday so that you can get on your agendas for the following week, and we can talk about that over the winter. But in the meantime, I just wanted to give you a little bit of what I see going on is, we had a banner set of skeet last year, and through the kindness of the community for the strandings that we had, and also the fact that the entire commercial fleet took a day off last year and moved seed all over the harbor, we have a banner harvest this year. And the problem that I foresee is, as Tara said, is if we don't harvest these adults, they die. Well, they don't die this year, but they'll die next fall. And I always thought, well, if we don't catch them, they'll spawn and we'll have more scallops for the following year. Well, I found out from Tara that is not the case, that they only spawn when they're young. They don't spawn again in the fall or in the spring. So if we don't harvest them in this winter, they'll be there, but they won't, they're just dormant. They've gone through their life cycle. So the market has changed substantially over the last couple of years. More and more fishermen are shipping scallops themselves off island. We don't have the amount of buyers that we used to have here that caused a vibrant market here on island. I, for one, ship my scallops off island, and the buyer that I ship to would like to get more product, especially for the next 6 weeks during the holidays, from now to Thanksgiving. After January, the market does kind of dry up a little bit, but so do the fishermen. So if we don't catch as much as we can in the next 6 weeks, a lot of these scallops are going to die over the winter. And one more box with level boxes is not going to make that much of a difference. So we hope that you would pass this tonight, and then we'll figure out the logistics so that we don't have the same type of problem again in the future.
Thanks, Bobby.
Sharon Ames, and I've been involved in the fishing scallop industry since 85 in the back of Charlie Sales shanty, but I've been on a boat since 91. And I'm going to look like the black sheep, I know I am, and I apologize to my peers, but I don't look at it just as the people in the boats. I look at it as openers. And the openers, nobody's asked them if they're willing to open more. I have a husband that can't open because he's allergic to them. We have our own shanty, but this year, openers have become extremely scarce. And when you all make your decision, I hope you think about the whole package, and the package does involve openers, and it does involve shanties that do and don't have, that are missing openers this year, in the past year. And I would like to commend Tara. The scallops that are out there right now are beautiful. They're beautiful, they're huge, and there's a lot of them. And I'm on a double boat. We bring in 10 a day easily, and that's great. And we could probably bring in 6, but I'm just saying that 5 days a week, my openers don't want to open more. So I just look at the other people too, and I apologize for sounding negative, but it's just another factor of scalloping that people kind of forget sometimes. The buyers, the fishermen, let's not forget the openers.
Thank you. Hence the reason for a more formal evaluation process, I think. So at this point, I've got one more person coming down, and then I think probably we're ready to.
Hi, John Logan, Matticat Road, commercial fisherman. And just so you realize that this request is not a mandate, but an opportunity. So if you choose not to get more, you don't have to. Just wanted to make that clear to everybody. And again, thank you for this consideration on such short notice.
Okay. Carl?
Hello, I'm Carl Sherrill, and I'm a vice president of the Shellfish Association.
Carl, just pull the mic down so people at home can hear you. There you go. Thank you.
One of the reasons we brought this forward is ordinarily a 5-box limit would be about 8 pounds of shucked meat. Can be 8 to 9 is really good. Anything over 8 is fine. This year it's 6. So if you're taking 6 and you're taking 5 bushels, you've lost 10 pounds, basically. So the fishermen are getting a 25% decrease in their income. That's one product right there. The buyers, when the season opened, they paid $12 a pound. You can't make anything at $12 a pound. It's going to cost you over $100 to get them opened. So a bunch of us have found niche markets throughout the Cape and through the whole state. And that has brought demand up, and that has brought the price up. If this little niche market that we have established wasn't there, we'd still be getting $12 a pound. And nobody can catch them at $12 a pound. Time you pay for the fuel and the shuckers, you're down to $8. So if you had 30 pounds at 8, that's $324. You can't do it. You can't do it at that price. Another thing is we have that the state limit is 10 bushels per boat. And there's 2 boats in the Cape that are doing 10. We've never gone over 10, and we don't want to go over 10 because, like Sharon says, you can't get them open. Well, the other thing is if you can't get open, don't take so many. That's the thing. If we go to 6, which I hope you do, a fella can, if he wants to take 4, if he wants to take 3. If it's a good day, nice sun is out, everything's, take the 6. I've never had a problem getting them open. It's there if you want to do it. But like I say, you're already 25%. Now, nobody working on Nantucket has just got a 25% decrease in their income. That's like that. But if you have the 6, and I hope you do it now, and it will start Monday, because this is actually the peak, because you're going to have a lot of people coming here for the holiday. And it's not all turkey. They like to have scallops, they like to have lobster meat, and this is the peak. And then when they come around the first of the year, you're not going to have the same amount of boats. We haven't had a cup full of wind yet. When the weather gets going, you'll see who's going to be out there. There'll be about half a dozen of us. And the supply will be coming way down, and that will keep the price up. It's supply and demand. It's just so simple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, pleasure of the board?
I'd make a motion to approve this and see how it goes for this season. I definitely want to keep this industry alive on the island.
So I have a second from Matt. Tom?
Madam Chair, effective what date?
Um,
Monday?
Monday.
Monday, okay. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be 12 boxes if you're in a double limit. Yes. In one vote. So we're 12 boxes.
Okay, we have a very hard time having people, I'm going to have the folks explain it to you. Because if you're speaking from the audience, the public can't hear you. It doesn't work that well. Okay. All right, terrific. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Let's see, moving on. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Any questions? Okay, we have someone who wants to ask a question.
I have a question in regard to professional services agreement for a line item from Plus Department for seasonal planters for a 3-year contract for seasonal planters for the Plus Department for $16,000. We're about to hear about 200 million in overrides, and we're going to spend $16,000 for flowers at the entrance for the planters for 3 years. Do we really need it? I mean, it's $16,000, that's $5,000 a year just to put flowers at the entrance. So
Okay.
I'm asking if we really need it.
Okay. Any comments or response from the board?
I have one question on 20 Maya Comet. How many bedrooms, how many people does that house? Do we know?
I can get that for you, Matt.
Yeah, get it for me later.
It's
that's fine.
multiple.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm guessing it's 3 or 4 bedroom, but okay.
It's at least that. It may be more than 5 or 6.
All right.
Okay. So I had a motion from Matt for approval.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I think Tom has, I will say he's bringing up a valid point that, that we should be, sort of every, in my business, I try to be careful with every dollar. And so I don't think it's a, anyway.
Okay.
I mean, wouldn't this fall under facilities?
Okay,
Landscape,
that-
not out of professional services of a budget?
Okay, that's a different question.
Can we table that for later?
Brian, do you have an answer to that?
I do.
Or Libby?
But I believe that the reason it's coming out of the plus budget for now, and basically all the money that funds the town's general fund is fungible, and it comes from, the same place for the most part. So it's not like people have their own money to spend. I believe that the planter agreement is not just flowers, it's other plantings. Many departments have flower boxes and other plants outside of their offices to make it look nice. And I think it came up after the landscaping contract was already executed, is my understanding. And when that contract comes up again, this would be added to it from the facilities budget.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next up is Housing Office request to modify the waiver of the sewer connection permit fee and sewer capacity fees for the Covenant lot located at 10 Field Avenue. Christy?
Thank you. So this is to clarify an item agenda from the September 25th Select Board meeting, in which I presented a sewer fee waiver request for 10 Field Avenue. The minutes for the September 25th meeting reversed the recommendation And so we needed to correct those minutes. And then in reviewing this with Erica, we also wanted to clarify the policy with the board. In looking at past practices, the select board has waived 100%. Sorry, 1 second. It's 100% of the sewer connection permit, but on private residency has not waived any part of the capacity fee. And in my recommendation, I had proposed 50% of the capacity fee. So the first request is to alter the minutes, which switched those two, the sewer connection fee and the sewer capacity fee. And the second is to have the board discuss if they would like to waive the capacity fee, and if not, to amend that motion.
Okay, so the amended minutes were approved, so that's been corrected. And now the question is, so what we did was, we gave a 50% waiver that is not actually, it's contrary to established policy.
Yeah,
So
I would like to flip-flop it and go back to the policy, to what it should have been.
Okay, so
So-
that is to amend the motion to simply waive 100% of the connection fee and none of the capacity fee
Yes.
on this property. Okay, do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. With apologies to the homeowner for the error, by the way. Okay, next up is Christie again, Tacoma Green, request for select board review of draft commitment letter from the town of Nantucket to Halkeen Management for Tacoma Green Project at 6 Fairgrounds. Christie?
Thank you. And we also have Vicky Marsh on representing the town, and James Haley here from Halkeen representing the developer. Just to give a very quick background on the project, and then I'm going to hand it over to Vicky to go through the details of the letter. So this project has been in front of the town since 2017. It's been a lengthy process where it was awarded the bid through an RFP to develop 64 units of affordable and workforce rentals. And it ended up going through the special permit process with the planning board and getting appealed by the neighbors. The appeal was resolved in 2020, but that was at a time with COVID and delays and spiking construction costs. That led to an increase in the cost to develop this project, and had the developers kind of go back to the drawing board in terms of securing more funding. In April of 2022, the select board heard an update from Halkeen around the project and their gap in financing, and at that point discussed committing to a $6.5 million loan towards the project. Part of that was also to secure funding for an additional basement on the project to ensure that we had storage in those units. Since that time, again, with rising costs and shifting around different funding sources from the state, the ask is now at $8.7 million, which will be constructed as both grants and loans to help cover the gap financing on this project. All 64 of the units will be eligible for our subsidized housing inventory, and when they close on their financing and pull the building permits, it will initiate an additional 2 years of safe harbor for the town. So that's kind of the overall update and review of the project to date. We've been meeting weekly with the developers, including a small team of Brian Turbot, myself, our consultants, and our financial advisors to review progress on this project and getting us ready to close at the beginning to middle of next year. And from there, I will pass it along to Vicky through you, Brooke.
Thank you, Christy. Madam Chair, so we've been asked to present a commitment letter to Halkeen as the developer of this project at the request of basically the state. They are going to be providing these state tax credits, and they need a commitment from the town, or looking for a commitment from the town by the end of this year. So for that reason, there's a sense of urgency in order to meet these deadlines so that we can make sure that this project will still have funding from the state. As you may recall, the town has already made significant commitments to Hal Keane in this project. We are providing them with a 99-year lease at $1 a year for the land on which this property is going to be constructed. We've also incurred costs for bringing in utilities for this project. And in addition, as a result of the
Vicky, you have frozen. We'll just hang in. We haven't had this happen in a while. Oh, she'll probably log back in. Hang tight, everybody. We're waiting for town council to come back on the meeting. Christy, are you able to reach her by text?
Let me give that a try.
Okay. Oh, John's on.
Good evening.
She's probably still telling us about it.
Yeah. John, do you want to pinch hit?
I can certainly try, and hopefully with some help from Christy. But so I think what Vicky was talking about was the if you will, in order for this project to proceed with the state grants, et cetera, they're looking for a further commitment from the town. And I believe that what we're talking about here is essentially an increase in the financial commitment that the town is willing to provide for this project. I think that what we're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, is going from the current contribution by the town of 6.5 million up to 8.7 million. And Vicky, are you back on again?
Yes, she's here.
Oh.
Vicky, we just need you to unmute.
Thank God. So I was just pitching in for you, Vicky. And I'm a very poor substitute. But as you may have heard, I was just talking about the essence of this is to increase the financial commitment from 6.5 million to 8.7 million by the town. And I think what's important here is to describe to obviously the select board members exactly how this financial commitment would be delivered, what kind of assurances the town would have, where we would sit in terms of priority of other liens on the property. So I will hand this over to Vicky.
Thank you very much. I apologize. The wonders of the internet and technology. So as John so aptly filled in for me and gave you further information, the loan for this is going to be the interest on this loan is going to be accruing at the rate of 1.5% per annum. We sit quite far back in the position of being able to be paid off on these loans. And I'll allow Brian Turbot to probably explain that better to you as far as the financials and the details that go with it. But I can tell you that as far as delivering this commitment, we would be involved in funding this project in addition with EOHLC and with Mass Housing and other funders and investors that are involved in this project. So there are a number of entities that would be contributing the funds to make this project happen. We would be participating through most likely the Mass Docs program, and in probably the next couple of weeks, you'll see an application that will come before you requesting and applying for participation in this Mass Docs program, which allows us to use the form of documents that all the other lenders will use. So there'll be a sense of consistency amongst all the lenders in this project. These documents have been developed over a period of time, and my experience has been that it's very helpful to have a set of form documents from which everyone is going to work off of. So there would be a note that would be a loan that's going to run to the Affordable Housing Trust in the amount of the $8.7 million with a mortgage to secure this loan. And that would be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. In addition, the town would be acquiring an affordable housing restriction on the units on this project, which will remain in perpetuity and be in compliance with Chapter 184 of Mass General Laws, so that the project will always have the protection of being an affordable housing project, even if there is a foreclosure. This restriction will survive any such foreclosure. And the town will be holding this restriction with EOHLC and will have the right to be able to enforce the restriction as well. So this will provide a great amount of protection for this project to always remain as an affordable housing project going forward. In addition, we're going to be asking the developer to be reimbursing the town and the trust for their costs, both legally and in preparation for the Mass Docs loan closing, for our review of documents, participation in calls and meetings, and making sure that the town's rights are protected in these documents and with EOHLC as well. And we are also, as I think I had mentioned previously, the town will be seeking the reimbursement for what we put up for legal costs in defending the appeal for the special permit. And that will also be paid out of costs at closing. They would also be we're also asking in this commitment letter that they would be providing an indemnification to the town in the event that there are any issues having to do with claims, suits, damages that are involved in this affordable housing project that are made against the town or its agents and associates. And lastly, we would be requesting that they pull their building permits. We haven't yet set the number of building permits that we'd be asking for by the time of closing. And we plan to discuss that question with the developer. But that will be a requirement for us to be able to move forward at closing. Lastly, the commitment letter, the town has the ability to terminate the commitment letter in the event that we find that there are any defaults under the terms and conditions of this commitment letter, any inaccuracies, misrepresentations, if there is an event of bankruptcy or insolvency filed by the developer, the town would have the right to be able to terminate this commitment letter. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if you have specific questions, perhaps that relate to the funding and the positions of the loans and the payments to the different funders, perhaps Brian Turbot would be better equipped to answer those questions for you.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Vicki.
you.
Yeah. Board questions, comments? Tom?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just quickly say that the Housing Office, Christie and her staff and Town Council spent a lot of time on this, trying to get it ready for prime time and bring it over the line, and got it to a good place where financially it made sense. There's also a lot of state funding for this project that will come to us that if it goes through the end of the year, that will not happen. And if Christy wants to comment a little bit more, or Brian wants to comment on that, they can do so. But we did consider this at AHT and voted to support this. So I think this project is in good shape now at this point.
Matt?
Yeah, just a few. I think what Brian's going to talk about, we are in, it was page, I think, 44 here. We are in a lower tier on this. This is not, I don't call this a loan. I call this a grant. When you're only getting 1.5% over, 30 years, 45 years, whatever this was, that we're going to be getting this paid back maybe. We're 60% of the cash flow is paid to developer, and they're in a tier ahead of us. I think that's one thing. So one of the questions I have, what is the value of the land? The cash is 8.7 that we're putting in, right? How much were the utilities? Does anyone remember utilities and work that we've done there?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. To answer that question, when we put the road in, I think the road actually, which included all the utilities, was approximately $3.2 million. But we did get, if everyone recalls, we did get 2 grants from the state for about $1.7 million for construction of that road.
And we got a little bit longer road. It went
Correct.
further.
That's correct.
So let's just give it, what, 2 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, so give it 2 million. And then what's the value of 3 acres of land right now on Nantucket? Come on, Don. Subdividable land. Come on, let's see that calculator, the head going. Oh, it's a lot.
Maybe
All right, so
4.
yeah. What's that?
4.
4 million?
Maybe more, I mean,
All right.
it's not being subdivided up, so.
It isn't, but regardless, it's a lot of money. Put a number on it. So we'll go with Don's. We'll go with 4. We're 8. We're at 12. We're at about 13 million. What is the cost for the building, for the project?
8.7.
8.7. No, that's not this cost. What's the construction?
Oh, okay.
The last information I had was about 58 million.
58. How much of that is Halkeen paying? And how much is the profit they're going to receive?
James is here. Do you want to comment on that, James?
So Halkeen has so far paid roughly $850,000 in pre-development expenses that will not be reimbursed at closing, and will effectively go into the project as a sponsor loan. The total amount we're projecting is about $1 million that the sponsor loan will be, that we're unable to take at closing for reimbursement. So in terms of the full capital stack, the project is divided into a 4% project and a 9% project. There are federal LIHTC and state LIHTC that make up the bulk of the financing. And then we have UHLC funding, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, some HSF funding, and state ARPA to make up
And
the
then
rest.
How much do you, it's on your financials, it's on your documents, how much do you estimate as your profit in year 2 or 3 when the project is done?
So in year 2 or 3, just on the portion that you guys are financing, which is the 4%, just to be clear, there's no cash flow. We basically we were paying back the sponsor loan during those, basically from the year of completion until year 18, so 15 years after construction. So for context, there's about $71,000 of cash flow in the first year of operation. And cash flow goes towards paying back the loan that us as the developer is contributing to the project.
Right, and that's on the 4%. What about on the other percent? When I was looking at this last time, I think it was $5 million was the number that I remember that was going to be available to you sort of in year 2 or 3. Am I wrong?
No, there's
There
on
were
the other.
development fees, there were building fees. When you add that all up, it was substantial.
There's
wrong?
there's a $2 million deferred developer fee, which we are basically in these sort of developments. It's we have a cash development fee, which is included in our budget, and then we have a $2 million deferred developer fee, which is basically we're not taking during the development period, and we only get paid that development fee once the building starts generating cash flow and we've paid off, or we're paying down our debt.
Right, that's not what I'm asking about. You're not doing this for free. So you're working for 3 years, 4 years, the building's all done, everything's tied up. There's a certain amount of money that you're projecting on those. I don't have the financials in front of me, but there's a certain amount of money that you're projecting to earn as a company on this, and I would like to know what that is. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Yeah, sure. So again, and I'm happy to send you, and we have the model that we've sent to Christy and to Brian. What you'll see is basically for the first 15 years of development, a large portion of the money is just going to pay back what we're effectively loaning to the project because we don't have enough funds to pay for it. After that, 60% of cash flow goes to Nantucket. So in the first few years, we're paying back Nantucket ahead of other lenders on that project because we recognize the contribution that Nantucket is making to this.
I think I'm sorry, I think you may have that back, or either this mass housing loan, 6-month cut. The town agrees that their interest in the loan is to be paid from cash flow, the mass housing loan and the 60% cash flow fee and any other higher tier. The town will then receive 40% of cash flow as the next tier priority. So explain that in English to us.
Sure. So in the operating cash flow of the property every year, we're going to have a permanent loan for mass housing, which basically is just a regular loan. It takes out our construction loan. It's just when you buy a house, right? It's what you pay every month as part of a mortgage. So we pay mass housing what they're owed, and then after that we have cash flow that then is available to equity and debt holders, right? So after mass housing gets paid, because they have the loan we need to service the loan, it enters what we're calling the waterfall, and we use that basically the first amount of money, the first $100, right, that enter the waterfall. 85% of that is going towards just paying back the loan that Halkeen has made to fund the project because there are not enough funds. So there's 85 cents of the dollar then flow down, are paid out towards the loan, and then there's 15 cents left over. 60% of those 15 cents or $15 go towards paying down the loan in Nantucket. In real dollar terms, that's around $6,500, $7,000 in the first few years to Nantucket, and it increases to around $10,000 a year.
Right, on an $8 million loan.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're paying $10,000 a year on an $8 million loan. That's why I'm calling it a grant, and this is what I called it previously when we talked about this, and this is what the, our bond counsel calls it. So, and I would argue with Tucker when he used to come up, this is a grant, and so we have to be clear that we are, in my mind, we're giving a grant. I think we're putting up as a town, 4 million, 10 million worth of land, figure out how we want to, we're putting up 13 million at a low estimate, Halkeen's putting in 2 million. And they're in first position, they get paid. You know, they get paid their 2 million, we are getting paid 10,000 a month. I think this is our first go-round at this, and we're all learning, and this is all new to us. But I think if we are putting up this amount of money as a community, that we should at least be co-general partners. We should be, you know, sort of one of the priorities. We're putting in probably 4, 5, 6 times more than anyone else is putting in. And the money that the developers are making on this, which they do pull out in year 2 or 3 when the project is done, they've got development fees and building fees and a fair amount, and they deserve those. That they need to get those. But if we were putting as much in as we are, we should be getting some of that and using that again for more housing. You know, we should be, that money, some of that stuff should be coming to the town of Nantucket. And so I've had, that's enough for tonight, but I just, you know, I've voted no the last couple of times. I haven't felt good about this. Anytime that I've had that an inkling and, you know, didn't look forward to like digging into this and didn't look forward to it in a business situation, you know, in retrospect, I shouldn't have done it. And so because of that, about a year and a half ago, I stopped, you know, supporting this, and I do not support it tonight for those same reasons. I think that we have to, you know, learn from this, you know, and do it where we have a development corporation, where we are, you know, recycling the money that is available from the state and others. We should be doing that ourselves. And so, you know, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the board or a motion?
I would just say I look at it a little bit differently in the respect that, I mean, none of these situations are completely perfect. And this obviously should have been built a number of years ago for a variety of reasons when it would have been more on budget. But we've been acquiring other pieces of housing like one at a time and spending $1 million, you know, $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million on things. And with this, we're getting 64 units of housing in a really good mix of affordability levels. So no, not everything's ideal about it, but I intend to continue to support it as long as this is it.
I mean, Matt had some definitely good comments, and that's, I think we've talked lately about a number of that at AHT. And I agree with everything that Dawn said. This project particular, what stands out is that, Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the state contribution here is $30 million. It's huge. And there's no way this project would happen without that. And that expires at the end of the year. But I agree. I hear
I'm
you.
also disappointed that we had a deadline and that wasn't met, and now here we are meeting their deadline. You know, and it's our deadline too to get the state money, but I hope that we are learning, because I think there is state money and federal money, there's things that we can get, and that we can be co-general partner and eventually be the general partner and do something ourselves on this. You know, if I could wave a magic wand, I'd have Steve Morey doing his thing here, you know, if this wasn't there, you know, so, but that's not, I can't do that. So this is more appropriate than what we were trying to do at town meeting. But anyway, it is what it is.
Christy, did you want to add something?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch a little bit on some of Matt's comments and to feel like we've been hearing what Matt's saying, and Brian Turbot and I have been voicing this very similar concerns in a lot of the discussions. This is a really tight deal, and Halkeen has stressed that. James just walked through the numbers. You know, even today, and kind of discussing it internally, we're not even sure this would be something a developer would pursue given today's numbers, but they're committed to getting this done. And it's really a policy decision by the select board of whether we want to call it a grant. We understand it's a low interest rate and the possibility of getting paid back, you know, might be slim, but is this the type of development that we want to see? This is going to be one of the only developments that are serving AMIs as low as 30% and 60%, and also includes market rate units so that nobody's excluded from being able to live here. So, I think it's a policy decision for the board, and something that at least the housing office and we've all been working towards. How do we get to a yes, and how do we make this work so it can move forward? I can't stress enough how disappointed we were in not being able to close at the end of this year. And that's something that the state held up through mass housing. And we're all working to try to close this as soon as possible because we want the units built and we want people living in the units and utilizing the housing. I also wanted to just touch on tonight is really a review and a chance for feedback. We'll be back on December 4th in front of the board to vote on a final version of this. The Affordable Housing Trust reviewed it at their meeting yesterday, as Tom mentioned, and gave some comments as well. So we're working on a final version that will be in front of both the trust and the select board the week of December 3rd and December 4th in order to get that commitment letter passed on, which is a deadline of December 10th. So I just wanted to thank you, and we're happy to listen to any more other if there's any other questions or concerns that you want Vicki and I to continue to work through.
Okay. Vicki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add also that we've put into this commitment letter that we are seeking a closing of June 30th of 2025. Originally, it had been presented that it could go later than that. And we have put this deadline in here so that we can try to make sure that this closing does happen as quickly as possible. And that apparently is the date that the state is looking for to try to close the loans with them. And in the event that for some reason the state is running long on being able to close this, there's an ability for the town to be able to continue to review the project and grant an extension on a month-by-month basis if needed.
Okay, thanks, Vicki. I was just going to say I did a little bit of math, Matt, adding up all the numbers, and this comes to about $230,000 a unit, which relative to some of the other things that are going on in the affordable housing space and the value of construction and so forth, to me, I understand the risks that you're talking about, but in terms of the raw numbers per unit, this is within the range, well within the range of what it's costing to create housing units on Nantucket. So that said, the pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Tom, second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Matt?
No.
Okay. So 3-1. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Tracy, next up is a real estate item request for approval and execution of a purchase and sale agreement and this is a yard sale, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. Tracy, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this is the approval and conveyance of a portion of parcels 35 and 36 of Plan 2408-M.
Yeah, Tracy, can you come in closer to your mic? You're
sure.
Very garbled.
Yep, sorry. So it's a portion of parcels 35 and 36 on Plan 2408-M, held by the town and certificate of title 625. This matter is part of an agreement which was negotiated with previous owners of 17 Ames and ultimately assigned to the Mankeys when they purchased the property in 2015. And it's the second part of the conveyance I presented at the Select Board on October 23rd. And it's also in conjunction with the taking of Ames Avenue that I previously presented earlier tonight. Let's see. The Mankeys have agreed to relinquish their rights in parcels 31 and 32 on the same land court plan in exchange for the conveyance of these lots, subject to the order of taking under the same conditions of the original agreement. This has required the town to obtain special legislation, which would include the ability for the town to utilize the parcels for roadway purposes, and that legislation passed in July. So the next step is to convey portions of these lots. pursuant to the legislation and accept the release of the rights in lots 31 and 32. The matter has been reviewed by the State Assessment Committee and also, as stated earlier, is for the overall benefit of coastal resilience planning.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Questions from the board? Pleasure?
Move approval?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so that's a 3-0 vote. Okay, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Okay, town managers report.
Okay, I do have one item, first off, that is not specifically listed on the agenda. It sort of came up after the agenda was published, and I wanted to review the annual employee appreciation event that took place last Friday, November 15th, and review with you what happened there. We had a really nice time at the Nantucket Hotel, and the main, highlight of the event, I guess, is the issuance of years of service pins. So we issue the pins in increments of 5 years, so 5, 10, 15, 20, et cetera. And the department heads did a great job handing out the pins to their people with nice recognition of them. And I did some of the department heads that got the pins. So I wanted to just take you through who the people were that got the pins. We first had some retirees that were acknowledged. This year, we had some retirees, Ellen Trefero from Finance, Blaine Buckley from the airport, and Kevin Manning from Sewer, all with pretty significant years of service. They all retired this year. And those people would have gotten pins if they had not retired of those incremental years. And other employees retired as well. Jerry Mack from the police department, Maureen DeLuca from finance, Teresa Eager Anderson from police, Charles Keimer from fire, Carol Matson from Island Home, Susie Gale from the police, and Margaret Molly Sprouse from IT. So they wouldn't have gotten pins, but they did retire, so we wanted to acknowledge them. We did a moment of silence for some employees who passed away during the year, and those were Ken Bogrand, Gary Hamblin, Ralph Hardy, Sybil Nickerson, Chris Pikus, Steve Sordovic, Henry Wazierski Jr., and Jack McGrady Jr. And some of those people were former employees, and some, I guess nobody was totally current. So that was nice, having some recognition of them. And then in town administration, Maureen Coleman, our public records extraordinaire person, got a 5-year pin. Brian Turbot, our finance director, got a 10-year pin. Nancy Holmes, town clerk, 15, and Mark Willett of the water department, 25. And then public works, we had some 5-year people, Don Whitaker, Ian Lewis, and Phyllis Rugaru, and a 15-year, Richard Moore, and Tristy Marks with 25 years at DPW. In finance, we had Missy Perry with 5 years, Val, I won't even say her whole name, just Val, Doncheva, 5 years, Mindy Ernst Fournier, she's our treasurer, 5 years, and Liz Flanagan with 20 years. In fire, we had Linda McDonald with 5 years, Chris Holland with 10. IT, Jamie McCoy, 20 years. He did have some service with the school, but he has been with us most recently.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I coached him. I can't believe it. I
Oh my
can't be that
gosh,
old.
did you really? Wow. Natural resources, we had Lisa Graves with 5 years, Leah Hill with 10, and Tara Riley with 15. Island Home, Annie K. Rose, 5 years, Mary Beckford, 5, and I think this person has a nickname, but I'm not sure what it is. What is her name, Peter? Rosie. Sorry, yes. There's some people there with difficult names, so they just have a nickname. And she had 20 years. Plus, we have Paul Murphy with 5 years, Doug Bennett with 10, Lauren Sinatra with 10, Catherine Ansero with 25, and Marcus Silverstein with 25. In the police department, we have Jimmy Olsen with 5, Nick Torino with 5, Megan Giacalone with 5, Eric Keever with 10, and Danny Mack with 30. So he got a little special extra. Registry of Deeds, Amanda Furtado with 10 and Kim Beamish with 20. Town Clerk, Laura Ramo has been our Assistant Town Clerk for 10 years. And Water Department, Rob West with 20 years. And that was it. So just wanted to run that and give those people some recognition.
It really was a great event. It was a lot of fun.
It really is a lot of fun. Okay, next we've got an overview of fiscal 2026 proposed capital projects and a brief overview of our capital improvement plan, which is a 10-year outlook. I wanted to just introduce this a little bit before the finance director takes you through it. Part of our annual capital project review process is this presentation to the board of proposed projects for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as a review of the out years. Some of the projects for fiscal 2026 that we're going to take you through will also be reviewed in the presentation that is the next agenda item. There's a bit of an overlap there. So Brian, you want to take us through?
Sure, thank you, Libby. So kind of the plan for the presentation of the fiscal 26 capital requests is give you an update on the status, go through the general fund and enterprise fund preliminary requests. We'll briefly touch on the out year, which is essentially the remaining 10 years of the plan, discuss some of the unknowns in the plan that we are working through, identify the next steps from capital program committee's process to FinCom and delivery of the report, and then any questions that the board may have. So I do want to say that Sue Carmel, our Assistant Finance Director, who focuses primarily exclusively on capital, has really done a really great job working on making refinements to the general fund and enterprise fund requests and how the information is input into Plum, the software that we're using. Capital Program Committee is nearing the end and wrapping up the initial reviews by the end of the month. I think this week they have a few more to tie up, and then they'll begin their discussions. Town manager has reviewed prior projects with the departments. We continue that review. We continue to look for ways to make the software easier for all the departments to use as well. And as the board knows, we are working on rolling out an online budget book through OpenGov, and one of the goals that we have long-term is to ultimately incorporate the capital improvement plan that's in Plum and integrate it directly into that OpenGov and budget message and online budget book. That's not something we could accomplish this year, but it is a goal for either hopefully next year or the year after that. So now we'll kind of just dive right into the fiscal 26 requests. I'll kind of go over on a high level what they are. If there's questions, certainly we'll do our best to answer them. We do have many of the departments here who can talk more specific about the details of some of these requests. Town administration has two requests, $500,000 for the continuation of the townwide document management system. This request would fulfill phase 3, which is to do all of scanning in Plus department, which as we know is a large undertaking. $1 million, which is a continued annual request and potential suggestion for funding for PFAS, for studies, consultants, testing, and any action that may come up that we need to address. Housing this year has a request. This is put forward again from last year's town meeting. For town employee housing, $14 million. This is for design and construction, and this would be for town employee housing along Waite Drive. Next slide. In IT, we have the annual $100,000 for the annual town computer annual replacement policy and program that we have to ensure that all the employees have operational and computers that are working and we can perform the functions that we do need. And then a few years ago, we actually transitioned to a virtual server environment, which has made, I think, our entire IT environment a lot better. It is aging, so IT is asking for $500,000 to upgrade the virtual servers and the environment itself, which is normally routine after probably about 5 to 7 years, I believe, which is where we are roughly at in this process. Public safety. Fire department has two, an additional replacement vehicle, fire prevention vehicle replacement, $76,000, an apparatus bay heating system installation for $280,000. The chief can speak more to this, but since we did transition to ALS, we do need to be able to heat the bays because there are medicines and things in the ambulances that we cannot let get too cold. So we do actually need to install heating into the bays to be able to continue to keep that stuff in the ambulances themselves.
Yeah,
Yes,
what kind of heat is it?
I'll let the chief answer
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm interested, how do you efficiently heat
So
such big
when the,
spaces?
when
Yeah.
this, when the space was built, it has radiant floor heating that does come up. But with the doors opening so often, that heat just dissipates very quickly. Over the last couple of years, we've noticed the temperature in that room has actually come down to the low 50s, high 40s at times. So what we're looking at is 4 blowers. The apparatus bay is sort of divided in half. We have like a tower in the middle of it that we use for training. So 4 blowers hanging from the ceiling on each side with some fans to move it around. And we think that that will do a better job of just keeping the temperature overall up higher.
Will this be propane, electric? What do
Yeah,
we-
so the building's already set up for propane. We have 2 1,000-gallon tanks behind the station. So I think the most cost-effective way to do it is just to tie into that system.
Okay.
And public safety has lighting control system replacement for $200,000 and seasonal dorm roof replacement at the Loran building as we are continuing the retrofit and repair to that seasonal dorm building. Next slide, please, Erica. Natural Resources has quite a few. Coastal Resiliency, the annual request for $1 million that we have started funding. Design money, phase 1 for the downtown neighborhood flood barrier. 5.1 million for the beginning construction of Saskatchewan Living Shoreline. 500,000 for a climate action plan sustainability framework. 500,000, which is a continuation of the baseline environmental data program. 250,000 for phase 1 for Brant Point Hatchery deck and pier adaptation, and repairs. And then 350,000 for Saskatchewan watershed nutrient loading and groundwater mapping. Next slide. Public Works. Central Fleet has a variety. We are trying more to put all of the department vehicle requests under Central Fleet so that they can manage them on a schedule. The 2 vehicles in finance and the assessor's office are just about 10 years old, so we have Central Fleet has put in a request for 2 new vehicles for the finance department. Facilities department is expanding, so they've requested a new e-transit van to be able to carry tools and materials to the numerous facilities that DPW does maintain. Front-end loader needs replacement at the DPW, and they would like to replace the 10-wheel dump truck. On the facility side, to continue to finish final design for the DPW facility, there's supplemental funding request of 1.5 million. Townwide facilities, municipal facility improvements. You remember a few years ago, we authorized 6.5 million. This is a continuation of that program to begin to update the town facilities. And then new construction ultimately for the DPW facility in the amount of $80 million. Parks and Recreation has a request for $96,000 for natural turf care equipment replacement, and Transportation has the annual sidewalk improvement plan, 1.2 million, annual island-wide road improvements request for 2 million, multi-use path annual maintenance request of 1 million, and annual cobblestone improvements, 550,000. We also have supplemental, it's construction supplemental funding for Tom Nevers multi-use path. That estimate is $6,853,000. And then design money for Pleasant Street, 5 corners to the roundabout in Williams Lane as part of the Complete Streets program, $1,911,000. School department, you see they have some IT infrastructure and equipment. The annual allocation for building improvements. They need to update and replace some of the security camera systems around the campus facility. And then the vestibule project for $270,000. Our Island Home, $96 million for construction of the new facility. All told, the request from departments is $229,330,356. Asterisk, it does include the $96 million estimate for the new Island Home. The approved request at the the 2024 annual town meeting for fiscal 25 forward is $32,224,000. Next slide, please, Erica. Within all of those requests, internally in town administration has identified 4 projects that we potentially will propose debt exclusions for. The first being the Island Home construction at annual town meeting in 2025, $96 million. Town employee housing design and construction, annual town meeting 2025 in the amount of $14 million. And then the Tom Nevers multi-use path supplemental funding and the annual 2025 town meeting for $6,853,000. And then at a special town meeting in the fall when design is done, DPW facility construction for the new facility, $80 million. All told, those debt exclusions total $196,853. And as the town manager mentioned, those are the basis for the second presentation and discussion. I'm not going to go through every one of these. I hope the board is okay with that, but the large projects in the out years total approximately $475,400,000. I will note that these amounts are not current. We've not gotten updated estimates, and the years that they would ultimately be brought forward is still somewhat uncertain as we work through the plan and priorities rise and fall amongst that plan. Airport, I won't take the board through entirety of this, but they're continuing their PFAS investigation, phase 3, $3.6 million. They are looking to continue their employee housing phase 2. This would be the remaining design for phase 2 and construction, $6 million. And the airport rescue and firefighting building rehab, $5.4 million, and South Apron noise barrier, $5 million. Sewer Enterprise Fund, the phase 9 of what's known as the CMOM, or Capacity Management Operation and Maintenance Plan, $2 million. A lot of this initially was camera work throughout the town and with a variety of different vendors for that, and then that money ultimately is used to make recommended repairs to the sanitary sewer system. Somerset Needs Area, $3.4 million for supplemental design for the beginning of that project. And then Sconset Wastewater Treatment Facility clarifier replacement, looking to begin the design to ultimately replace the clarifiers at that Sconset plant. Solid Waste, as the board will remember at last year's town meeting, we did appropriate money to acquire the composter. We will need to set aside some money to begin to make repairs over the coming years with the transition from the current waste service agreement. $400,000 for siding and roof replacement and repairs to the building. The composter tip building, siding and roof repairs and replacement, $275,000. Building improvements to the biofilter, $600,000. And then the ram feeder system repairs, $500,000, and aeration and tip buildings, including a new conveyor system, $600,000, and security cameras around the entire facility, $50,000. Water has one project. It's distribution improvements throughout the island of $4,700,000 is the request to the Capital Program Committee. Preliminary request for the Enterprise Fund, $41,885,000, approved last year of $38,123,000. Next slide, please. So just some highlights to the out years. As you can see, and I apologize, as we have so much on this, some slides get pretty compacted because we're trying to show so many years. The out years, $56 million for a central office, a central municipal building, and potentially in 27 and 28, $39.5 million for a new senior center design and construction. Next slide, please, Erica. IT has the big capital item really in there is the update to the GIS digital imaging. We do that every between 5 to 7 years. Fiscal 27 is the next year for $300,000, and then after that, that would be done in fiscal 33. Everything else in their budget is just usual annual requests to continue to maintain the infrastructure. Public safety, specifically first fire, we have some ambulance replacements. The big one is the potential ask in fiscal 27 to replace engine 3 for $1 million. And then with police, The big ask really there over a few years is the replacement of the body worn and vehicle camera system that is currently in operation. Natural Resources has an awful lot of them. I don't think I'll go through every one of them unless the board has any questions on specific ones. Oh, now we're getting into. Let me just grab my paper, I'm sorry. Public Works. $10 million for Parks and Rec and continuation of the Parks and Rec's master plan implementation. The large one under DPW transportation, beside the annual continuation of the annual programs for island-wide road maintenance, sidewalks, cobblestones, multi-use paths, is $40 million potentially in fiscal year 30 for Mattocket road raising and bridge conversion. And then I think those are pretty much the big ones for Public Works.
Yeah, is the Washington Street parking lot actually going to happen, or?
We did, I think it was at this meeting, we did actually approve the contract for the engineering redesign of various town parking lots, including Washington Street. So I think I'll let the town manager answer the likelihood of happening.
Yes, we hope so. To answer, is it ever going to happen?
Because some of the Washington Street stuff is considering pumping and doing it, as long as, hopefully that will be included in it. And we aren't doing it and then redoing it if it's going to happen.
Yep, the DPW director is online. If we, Drew, do you want to add anything?
I just want to make sure
that?
they're coordinated.
Yep, I think definitely they are, but
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
yes.
We actually had a kickoff meeting today. I believe that contract for McClure Engineering was approved at on the last pending contracts agenda. We had a kickoff meeting today, and the large part of that meeting was making sure that other efforts in close proximity to Washington Street and the other parking lots included in that contract are coordinated with those other efforts.
Next slide, please, Erica. School, the largest request in the out year is fiscal 32, potentially $85 million for a new middle school. Next slide. Enterprise fund out years. Next slide. Next slide, please, Erica. They're not really broken down, but the majority of the airport out years is really their AIP projects, which is the 90% funded by the FAA. It's about $200 million worth of projects. This is not finalized until pretty close to the start of our fiscal years in our capital process. So these are placeholder numbers for them.
What's the 94 million? That one blew me away a little bit. What do we need that's going to cost 94 million in a couple of years?
That I think is the runway, but I will get back with that answer to you, Matt. But I do believe that is the runway.
I think I'm pretty sure it's a repaving of one of the runways. It's a big number.
And then they do.
Okay.
It will be largely paid for by the federal government.
It's still taxpayers' money. Now I'm sounding like Tommy. I'm sorry, Tommy.
And then the other larger ticket item is in fiscal 27 is the expansion of the snow removal equipment building. Next slide, please. For sewer, essentially we do have continuation over the next 10 years of CMOM program, as well as potentially the Somerset Needs Area construction, estimated to be $32,900,000, which would be potentially in fiscal 27 after the design is completed. One note on that, we would certainly be applying to the state revolving fund for low interest loans, maybe potentially even 0% for that. Some of the other bigger out year projects, Hummock Pond area South Sewer expansion, $25 million, potentially allocated between fiscal 29 and 30. And then $12.1 million for the Sconset area sewer redesign and reconstruction, which I think could potentially be pushed out another year at this point, potentially. Solid waste out years, there's only, next slide, please, Erica. Solid waste, there's only one in the out years for smart compact waste receptacles in fiscal 30 for $200,000. Next slide. Water out year, the really large one, $7 million to recoat the water tanks. Next slide. So some unknowns, as you know, multiple departments have some money allocated for PFAS remediation. There's certainly the scope of that, and the impact of any requirements is an unknown as we develop this plan. Any recommendations from Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, certainly at the timing of this, are still somewhat unknown on what they may recommend. Probably with respect to the Parks and Recs master plan implementation, possible revisions due to Coastal Resiliency Plan and other town priorities. And then the big one, I think, on this entire plan, which impacts even this current year, is the inflationary impacts. Most generally on the out year projects, I think we have a pretty good handle on the costs of the current year projects. But out years, certainly, it's a very big unknown for us.
It was just a quick comment. It's interesting. I was reading something today, and since like 1970, inflation has run about like 4.8%. And so the period we just went through of 3% loans and hardly any inflation was an anomaly. And people think because it was so close, everyone thinks that's normal. But but since the 70s, over 50 years, it's been closer to 5% inflation. And so, a hamburger, a Big Mac was 50 cents and it's $5 now. Yeah. So I think that is, it has to put it in perspective. We have a bias toward what happened to us recently, as though that's the way the world always is. And I think sometimes it's important to look at it as it's not always like that.
Sure. So no, and that's a good point. Next step. So Capital Program Committee is currently completing their review, as I noted. They're expected to have preliminary up-down recommendations by mid-November. I think they're still on track to get pretty close to that. Finalized funding recommendations. The town manager and I are meeting to begin making our funding recommendations. Those recommendations are to be done mid-December with a final report for the 19th of December. And then Select Board and Finance Committee review Capital Program Committee's recommendations. The expectation is in that January of 2025 that the Capital Program Committee will come before the Select Board to discuss and distribute their report and answer any questions on their recommendations. So all in all, I think the process is moving right along, pretty close to the timeline that we have laid out. And I do want to thank Sue Carmel for all the great work that she's done, helping all the departments and working with the Capital Program Committee. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thanks very much, Brian. Don't go too far.
I won't.
So approximately a year ago, Brian and I were here before you reviewing major capital projects expected to be put before the voters in the near term. And because of the size and cost of these projects, it was considered important to brief the board and let the public know what is coming up, along with projected tax impact information. We are working on ways to improve our presentation of all of this information to make it easier to understand. And if you all have suggestions as we're going through this, those are most welcome. Fiscal 26 and other near-term major capital projects are coming at a time of considerable local, national, and international economic uncertainty. We are very much aware of that. The projects that we're going to go through do support the board's strategic plan. They are substantial, with 2 projects, the new Our Island home and the new public works facility, totaling nearly half of the $230 million projected costs. In light of our geographical location and climate change, population growth, and associated service demand increases, the town overall is facing many potentially costly capital costs. Brian's going to take us through this, and we have been working to identify ways to mitigate the cost on the taxpayer. There's nothing that will eliminate it, obviously. We're doing our best to see what can be done to mitigate. But other than not doing some of these things at all, which is will really hamper operations and/or cause us to rethink some of the operations entirely. So Brian's going to take us through. I might interject here and there on some of this. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Libby. So kind of the roadmap for this discussion is we're going to talk about the potential debt exclusions again, and then potential out-year debt exclusions. We're going to give you an overview of the current debt profile in terms of the amount of debt in the general fund that we're carrying, and kind of show you what, in a pie chart, what that looks like in terms of impact on the tax rate. We will take you, and then projected general fund debt profile will take us through scenarios of when we anticipate these potential or proposed debt exclusions would begin impacting the residents, and we'll take you through all of the assumptions. And there is a slide at the end about some of the unknowns that we are working through. So next slide, please. So as we just talked about in the previous presentation, the potential debt exclusions are Island Home, Town Employee Housing, Tom Nevers Multi-Use Path, and DPW Facility Construction, totaling $196,853,000. Again, the same slide, we did want to just highlight this. Potential out-year debt exclusions, $435,400,000. Again, these are programmed in numerous different out years, and that is all subject to change, but we did want to present that to you as well, so you could see those. So currently, as of June 30th, 2024, the general fund's debt profile, we had $174,751,000 in principal and interest outstanding as of the most recent completed fiscal year. That is both debt in and inside the Proposition 2.5 levy limit, and then debt excluded. So within Proposition 2.5, there's $27,701,000 of that debt, and excluded from the limits of Proposition 2.5 is $147,050,000. If we did nothing and we added no other projects and no other debt to the profile, at the end of fiscal 35, 71% of our current debt service will have been paid off. As the amortization schedule stands now, the entirety of this debt outstanding at June 30th, 2024 is scheduled to be completely retired in year 2044. Next slide, please. This graph just shows you the trend line for the current debt profile for payments between fiscal 25 and fiscal 35, starting with about 15 million and ending in 2035 at just over 8 million. Next slide, please. So what we've tried to do is look at estimating the fiscal 25 tax bill, and I do want to caution everybody, this is an absolute estimate. The values haven't been set. This is using fiscal 24 values that were set during the tax rate setting process. What we did in attempting to do this is we took the average year-round single-family home assessed value of $2,012,976, and we subtracted the residential exemption of $799,150. So all of the estimated bills are predicated on the assumption of the assessed valuation being $1,213,826. In the illustration here for the fiscal 25 estimate, the tax bill would be $903.80. And in the pie, we have broken it down between within Proposition 2.5 levy limit, what the current debt exclusions that are on the books are, which is right around $400, and then what the Community Preservation Act charge would be, which is $104. Next slide, please, Erica. So all of the assumptions that we have built into the subsequent slides that I'm going to take you through are built on this. Assessed valuations are the fiscal 24 values as certified by the Bureau of Local Assessment, as I just mentioned. We have made no provisions to the change in the residential exemption, which is currently at 25%. All of the debt service is estimated to be amortized over 25 years. And we have calculated in consultation with Hilltop a 4.5% interest rate, but I would note that that is a very conservative rate for illustrative purposes only, and we likely would borrow at a more favorable rate when we do go to market. Next slide. So the first three projects that we have talked about, being Our Island Home, Town Employee Housing, and Tom Nevers Bike Path, are the three projects that we are including in this new debt, the debt profile, including new debt. as of June 30th, 2027, excuse me. Now, the way that we have programmed this in is we assume that we would borrow those projects permanently 2 years after approval at the meeting that they were approved at. So if they're approved at the 2025 annual town meeting, we program these that they would be fully borrowed by June 30th, 2027. And those would add $328,103,000 to our debt profile. In the table below, you'll see the current debt profile, which is current as of 2027, would be $131,096,036. Now that projection takes into account all payments of debt between now and then adds the the additional debt service into that. So we would have $19,454,426 within Proposition 2.5, which is funded through the normal levy limit. And then excluded from Proposition 2.5 would be $308,648,866 for a total debt service, principal and interest of $328,103,292. Next slide. This shows what the profile for debt payments would be. It would start at $21 million in fiscal '28 and proceed down to $16 million in 2037. For purposes of this, we've also projected, with the debt being on the books in June 30th, 2027, that we project the first payment would begin in fiscal '28. Next slide. So here we have tried to show what we could estimate the impacts by project. The total is $257.08 for those projects if they were to be added into the fiscal '28 tax bill. Next slide. And then on the chart, we have added a second pie slice for those new projects. So again, the larger square is all of the funding for financing within Proposition 2.5, CPA, the new proposed debt exclusions for those 3 projects, and then the current debt exclusions that we have on the books and are continuing to amortize. Total tax bill would be estimated to be $4,160.87. It assumes all the projects are approved, and again, the same methodology was employed to calculate the tax bill using the assessed valuation of $1,213,826. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Tom?
Yeah.
Brian, CPA meaning CPC, correct?
Yes, community
Okay.
preservation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Okay. Next slide, please, Erica. So knowing that the DPW is going to most likely be put forward at a special town meeting, we have separated that out because the other 3 were assumed to be presented at the annual town meeting. So this shows the profile as of June 30th, 2028. It's slightly longer than the others in the way we estimated it. We estimate there at June 30th, 2028, $439,299,110, which would be including the DPW building and the three prior projects that we assumed were approved for the present illustrative purposes here. Debt service within Proposition 2.5, because we are amortizing that debt, $16,981,378. Excluded from the limits of Proposition 2.5 would grow to $422,317,732. For the total of $439,299,110. And as noted, this does include the prior borrowings for our Island Home, Tom Nevers multi-use path, and town employee housing. So here you would see that the debt service payments beginning in fiscal '29 would go to $25.7 million, and over the 10-year life cycle would amortize down to a payment in 2038 of $21 million. A little over $21 million. Next slide. Again, capturing the estimates for not only the 3 prior projects, but the new DPW facility. $433 is the estimated additional impact on the tax bill. Next slide, please, Erica. And again, we've created the pie chart. The green slice is the proposed, all the new proposed debt exclusions, including their island home, Tom Nevers, and town employee housing, and including the DPW. The current debt exclusions, $400, Community Preservation Act, $104, and then the amount within the levy limit, estimating the tax bill to be $4,336.83. Again, I do want to note that this is based, same methodology of a home, year-round single-family home assessed at $1,213,826. I want to stress too that these are very preliminary estimates. There's been no changes made in these assumptions for assessed value or any of the things that will ultimately impact the rates when we get to these years. So next slide, please. So there's some few unknowns that we are working through. Our island home financial offsets. Are there grants available to help offset the construction costs? As the board is aware, we receive the certified public expenditure receipts on an annual basis, commonly known as the CPE. It's a policy decision. Could we use some of that on an annual basis after certification to help offset some of the debt? In the potential out years in that $435 million, there are some needs areas extensions. So do we consider sewer betterments to help offset some of those costs? With Baxter Road, alternative access, betterments potentially. I'm going to save the incoming administration discussion for the end, but any potential changes to the residential exemption, I think, is a policy decision that the board will entertain during tax rate setting time. And then we highlighted this because this is a really big unknown, and this has been brought up in the last 10 years while I've been here at least 2 or 3 times. Currently, the majority of the debt that we sell does is tax exempt. A potential in discussion with Hilltop is the belief that the incoming administration may look to make a tax code change which would eliminate the municipal debt tax exemption, which would make it substantially more difficult or more expensive for the town to borrow in a couple different ways, not only in the interest rate that we would pay, but also in the cost to issue the debt. Because the majority of the debt that we issue is tax exempt, we sell it at a premium, and we use that premium to pay issuance costs, and we use that a subsequent premium that was not needed to pay issuance costs to resize the debt, thereby lowering the amount we're issuing. And if the exemption was to be removed, most of that would all be eliminated, and we would be paying to issue all this debt, which, depending on the size of the issuance, can get very, very expensive. And it could potentially be anywhere between a 1% to 2% increase in the interest rate.
What would be the rationale for doing that? Is it to benefit private corporations over municipalities? I mean, it's been a two-tiered system like this for
It has.
as long as I can remember.
I don't know if it's to do that. I think it's more to fund many of the initiatives that the incoming administration may want to propose or undertake, and this would be one way to potentially do it.
I don't get it. Anyway.
I don't think it would be a good idea, and I think it would have a detrimental effect on infrastructure improvements and everything that goes along with it. But Hilltop is concerned enough about it that they did mention it as we were talking about this. And I know in the last 18 months it has been brought up in one of the organizations I'm a member of. We've had conversations about it.
Right. Yeah. The only thing I can think is they're trying to move more money in a different direction.
Yep.
Because right now, a lot of money goes into municipal bonds, municipal investments, because it's considered safe for somewhere like this. Whereas if you put a higher cost on that, well, maybe people will go to other things. That's the only thing I can think of. I can't imagine, because it's, anyway.
So, thank you, Brian. I want to just mention that we are very well aware that, no offense to Brian, but this is a very dry presentation. The graphs are not easy to understand. They all look alike, and we are working on ways to better visualize all of this so that people can understand what their tax bill impact is going to be. Most likely, people, that's what most people probably want to know. How are all of these projects going to impact my tax bill? So as I have mentioned to the board before, we are going to be working on a brief presentation to town meeting before we get into the articles to review the capital improvement plan, which will have this information in it and highlight some of the higher level, not higher level, higher cost projects. And at the same time, we're working on, the Island Home is taking the time of quite a number of town staff people, including board members. Dawn is our board liaison for that project. And we are getting into our communications and outreach plan very, very shortly. And we've also had some discussions about, and I'm just mentioning it because it's such a huge project, almost $100 million, biggest project we've ever undertaken. And we have a lot of concern that if that project is approved, are any other projects going to be approved anytime soon, which we also very badly need. So we're trying to be very realistic about everything and understand that it's possible that a project like the Island Home project won't pass. And if it doesn't, we need to review what the alternatives are going to be. And an alternative for that particular project might be, we're not going to proceed with operating a municipal nursing home in the future. We would probably at some point, not immediately, need to undertake some sort of phase out of that facility. And I think we know that there is only one other municipally operated nursing facility in the state. Peter actually was in touch with them very recently, and it sounds like they may be phasing out as well. So, or phasing out. So we don't want to come across as threatening in any way whatsoever, because I think we all very strongly support this project. It would be good for the community. It would be good in many ways, but it is also very, very expensive. And we do have a lot of big projects coming down the road. So we're working to get this in a more concise type of presentation.
Can I make a quick comment? I think you guys have put the town has put so much work into it over 10, 15 years that I think it would be irresponsible for us not to bring it. But I think if it is voted down at town meeting or at the ballot, I think you are 100% right to be saying the next planning is something different, because I think that will be the message if we get that. So I think you're 100% right to be thinking about it that way and positioning it that way. And I don't take it as a threat. I take it as this is the reality that we're facing.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we've looked at all the options for our Island Home. You know, we've looked at renovating, keeping it in the same location, putting it here. And we have expended a lot of money in analysis and design for multiple different possibilities. And for me, this feels sort of like it's this or, in a way, it's a bit of a referendum on whether we want to continue to have a municipally operated nursing home, not an opportunity to say, what if we try this instead? Because I think we've done the try this instead enough times now that we're sort of to my mind, we're sort of at the end of the road here on the final decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's the inevitable. The facility is failing. It's not meeting many needs that need to be met, not from the staffing side. The staff is wonderful, but the building has to be built new at this stage. And frankly, I mean, obviously one of the things that people continue to question is why can't we rebuild at the current site? Well, the new facility as designed is actually too large for the current site to meet the appropriate care needs. for a facility that will last us for decades going forward. And really serve the people the way that they should be served.
And you couldn't relocate the people in order to do it.
No, I mean, that's a whole nother piece, but even if it was a vacant site, it's not big enough. And it will be a great site for, a senior center proposal, which we'll obviously have to bring forth and figure out how to fund that as well. But I think that could be a really great community benefit. So, yeah, I mean, nobody wants to come off as threatening or not listening. We've listened a lot and gone back to the drawing board a lot, and this is land that we own. And I mean, there's also an article in for town meeting that talks about a land acquisition as another site. I can't imagine adding millions of dollars more to this project to acquire land, as it is. Some of our negotiations to make it work with Sherburne Commons have made it a little bit more expensive. So, but I think it's time to bring it forward one last go around after a lot of thought and consideration and a really great team working on it.
Tom?
Dawn, it's also very unlikely that DPH would re-permit a new facility in its current location, correct? Because of coastal resiliency, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there are some things that are not ideal about the potential flooding at that site. And I mean, realistically, the building really needs to be one floor for a number of reasons, for staffing, for fire safety, for functionality. And in the current proposal, there is also basement space for additional storage and other backup needs like laundry and that kind of thing, which you couldn't put a full basement at the current site. But regardless, you still run up against the problems that the site isn't really big enough. It's not big enough to fit the new design. It's certainly not big enough to flip the new design and keep the old one there. And that would mean it's an impossibility to relocate all of the people that are there and put the employees on hold. And there's so many problems with it. But we're not planning to sell it. We voted not to sell it. We would have to take it to town meeting to sell that land. We want to reuse it for something that a lot of people can enjoy.
Okay. Warren?
Yes, I'm sorry. And before I get into the warrant, I just wanted to go back a little bit to the employee appreciation event. I totally meant to add more to it, but I got so excited about the fiscal 26 capital presentation that I forgot about it. I wanted to really thank all town employees for their hard work. Much of the service delivery that happens in the town, which is many, many things, happens behind the scenes. And in conditions sometimes that are less than ideal. So we really thank them for their dedication and hard work. All right, moving to the 2025 annual town meeting warrant. In your packet is what I am calling outline number 5 of potential warrant articles for town sponsorship and a list of some other issues relating to town meeting. And the new items, I've been trying to show those in bold. There's not too much new since last week. General, and so on the first page there, general bylaws down near the bottom. We had this discussion, was it last week already with the Wisconsin Civic Association or a couple weeks ago, about the potential changes to the noise bylaw, and they are still working on that, and I think would like to continue pursuing this with the board for 2025 annual town meeting. So that's kind of in progress. I've added a real estate item to the real estate related list of articles. 7 Amelia Drive, that is town owned, and we need to get long-term lease authorization from town meeting. And the citizen warrant articles are in. There are 26 of them. The signatures have been certified, and we really give a big shout out to the town clerk's office for getting those done so quickly. Those will now be evaluated by town council as well as pertinent departments for recommendations to the finance committee and other groups. And they're online if people would want to take a look at them. And I'll be giving you another update as things come in, most likely at your next meeting on December 4th.
Thanks, Libby. Okay, moving on to select board reports and comments. Next on the agenda is update on the USS Nantucket commissioning. Tom, did you want to say anything? Because you were there?
Yeah, so we were both there. It was an absolutely fantastic day and a half. I attended the pre-commissioning dinner. There were 2 secretaries of the Navy, a Medal of Honor winner, several admirals, many veterans, and a lot of Nantucketers there. I was honored to give a few remarks that Brooke was supposed to do on Saturday, but they shuffled the schedule around to try and make it an hour. The Commander Jakobison couldn't be more welcoming to us, and she's very impressive, and so are her crew. It was really nice of her to give a challenge coin from the ship to me, and I'm sure that town staff got them as well. And the tour of the ship was amazing. And what was really, you see this ship of war, and it's kind of austere, and it's steel, aluminum, et cetera. And there were some really nice touches inside. Some of the staterooms, they had quarter boards made with quid net and great point. And when you went through the ship, and we went on the bridge and on the deck, and it was amazing. It was like, no, people live here. This is their home while they're out serving, and that really kind of hit home for me. It was a very special time. Really thankful to everybody for just making us feel welcome and showing us around and making a nice weekend off island.
And I would say on the quarter board thing, the sponsor, Polly Spencer, had these quarter boards made, and the sick bay is called Cottage Hospital. So and when the crew came the weekend before, they really now know, they've seen the places that these, areas of the ship are named. And so there's this real visceral and visual connection between their experience and seeing those signs on the doors and the places they saw here on Nantucket. And for me, the history of it, I was a history major in college, and having this brand new ship stern to stern with the USS Constitution and feeling the thread of history of this ritual of commissioning a ship was really moving. And the farther along it got, I had the privilege and honor to be up on the stage looking out at the crowd, and just watching the commander, the XO, and the commander doing this ritual communication back and forth of the process. And then I think my favorite thing is the time when they bring the life to the ship and the crew runs from the back of the audience up the gangplank, which, by the way, it was a flood high tide. So it was like they were climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. They normally would be running, but they couldn't run because it was so steep. And they set off all the horns and bells and whistles on the ship, and that is signifying breathing life into the vessel. And a friend of my sister's was a Navy subcommander, nuclear subcommander, and I had the opportunity to talk to him about this, and he said the culture of a vessel is established at this commissioning and by the first crew, and they talked about that a lot in the ritual, and this friend of my sister's was saying how vital to the future of any vessel this first crew that brings it to life is, and just the history and ritual of that was pretty impressive. So it was more than I intended to say, but it was really moving, actually. Anyway, okay, we're at a brief discussion of the public forum on South Coast Wind. And I've asked Will Cook to join us online just to walk us through the actual next steps in what we'll be doing with the information that we gathered. And I want to thank the community for their thoughtful comments, their participation, and the ideas they brought to this question we posed, which is, should the federal government permit this project, what is the appropriate ask for mitigation for the impact on our historic landmark and the visual impact for us. And it is a very difficult process for us because I was hoping to convey to the community the limitations of our voice as a municipality in that process, and that we have to go through the process as outlined by the federal government in ways that may not or do not feel comfortable with the community at all right now, given what we're looking at and the turbine incident. But the process is laid out, and it's structured in a way that's very limiting to us. And I'm hoping Will can help us help explain where we take what we gathered last night from the community and what's next. Will?
Sure, thank you. Chair Moore, I agree. I thought last night's public input session was very helpful. I thought there were some substantive ideas that were shared. To your question about next steps, BOEM has released for execution or signing the Memorandum of Agreement, which is the document that terminates the Section 106 process. It was released yesterday for a 30-day review period with a deadline or anticipated deadline of having the document executed of December 19th, 2024. There are a number of signatories that are required for this agreement to be fully executed. That includes BOEM, the project developer, and relevant to issues of historic preservation, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, which is the lead federal agency in charge of Section 106 enforcement, and the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Officer, who has sadly been missing, at least from our vantage point, on aspects of the South Coast Section 106 review. We have shared our idea of requesting that the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation and the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Officer refuse to sign the Memorandum of Agreement pending BOEM's consideration and resolution of the town of Nantucket's objections. And we have also arranged to have a conversation with BOEM and members of the Department of the Interior's Office of the Solicitor, which is their sort of law division, set for tomorrow, to share with them some of the mitigation suggestions offered during the public input session. We don't know when or if the Advisory Council and the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Officer will sign the agreement, but that creates pressure for us to begin to have the conversation with BOEM about proposed mitigation that has been offered, whether it's an objection or whether the town wants to put forward ideas that were gathered during the public information session and on it through its own research. So that does create some time pressure to move forward, because once the agreement is executed by the required signatories, it becomes final. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
I've got, well, you can go, Don.
I think we really want to get the point across after everything that's happened that these turbines in general are so much more impactful than we initially realized. And we can focus on the visual aspect of it. And I think that we really need to make that clear to these signatories, that the state, you know, the statements coming from some of our state representatives and the governor are that Nantucket really supports this, and that's just really not true. And the other thing I would really like to see is what we can do to delay this. Ask for extensions, get to the next administration that's not as pro-wind energy to, I mean, the community is speaking pretty loudly that they don't want to see any more of these, and that it's a lot worse than we anticipated. So, yeah, I guess my question is, what do we need to do to get that sentiment to the signatories and also get extensions?
Will, did you have anything?
Well, we are crafting a message that can be distributed to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation and the Massachusetts State Historic Preservation Officer through any number of channels. We would encourage a method or platform that would encourage the broadest base of citizen participation so that these officials can hear from the town and its citizens directly. There are a number of platforms, like I think one is called Every Action that I can recommend. The town may have existing platforms, but I think it's important for these officials to hear directly from the people, since they have not been listening to the town during the consultation process.
Yeah. So the communications department is working up a strategy to make it easy for community members to provide that input. So keep an eye on comms outreach in the next few days and social media from the town. There should be an opportunity forthcoming.
Would that be so that someone could fill in one thing and it would go to?
Yeah,
10
it would,
that would be
it would
great.
distribute to the places where we need to communicate this. Libby, did you want to?
I was just going to mention that we are hoping that CHP will develop it so that it can just be kind of put right out.
Yep.
And we were having a little bit of a discussion about, we want to be careful about what message the town is putting out and what the town is asking other people to do. But I think we did do something very similar with the right whales. And we gave links and things to federal agencies and federal officials' offices so that people, and we may have had a draft letter, I can't even quite remember, but it would be similar to that, I think.
And there, if those signatories were to fail to sign or refuse to sign, that would result in a delay.
Well, not so potentially. So if the signatories refuse to sign, that means that a couple of things could happen. BOEM could extend the timeline for executing the memorandum of agreement. It's unlikely to do that because it's under a 2-year deadline under federal law called FAST 41, which is an infrastructure permitting streamlining statute. If it cannot get the document executed, Section 106, the Section 106 regulations allow federal agencies to terminate consultation, which would then start another process that would require notifying the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation that the Section 106 process has been terminated. And that would then trigger, I believe it's a 30-day period for the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation to offer comments on the termination. This was something that happened in the Cape Wind issue. However, based on our understanding of current leadership at the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, there's not a lot of weight being given to concerns over adverse visual effects from offshore wind.
Yeah, and I think we have to be realistic that the current administration this is a policy priority, and it seems more likely to me that they will do everything they can to get this permitted before the inauguration, just because it's been a priority of theirs. So, but we are pursuing every avenue possible, and we will be having the conversation with Boehm tomorrow on the response to the mitigation offer.
Yeah, besides the 106 issue, what other issues could be potentially, what are the ways to delay or to, sort of ask them to do their jobs a little more diligently? What other ways, what other options are there available to us as this goes along? I guess it's a will question, or?
Well, I've explained that we're here on a 106 process. There is not a check the box that causes delay. I've offered some suggestions for requesting delay, but ultimately that decision will be in the hands of BOEM. If the signatories do not sign, BOEM will have an option of terminating consultation, which will create additional delay, but there's nothing we can do to force that. So
I understand that. I'm talking about, let's just, if this plays out in a month or 3 months, what other, and I guess some of that probably can't be discussed here, but, what other options does the town have? That's one of the things I'd like to talk about at some point. I do think, the other question I have is there were a lot of good ideas that were said yesterday. How are we going to incorporate some of those? Like, I think so a lot of it was on decommissioning, which I think is valid with the view, et cetera. I think there was, the lighting, and there was some good ideas about, ensuring the lighting is up and, and it's, et cetera. There was a lot of those things. How do we get those into this? Because if this is on a tomorrow timeframe, first off, I'm not of the opinion we shouldn't make a comment. I think we should comment. I think we should set the bar, fairly high, because I think that, we heard from the community, and if we actually just think about it ourselves, we know what the potential impact of thousands of these off the coast will be, of the visual. We know what the impact could be environmentally. We're fortunate that it happened this summer. I think we're fortunate because that's a warning sign. And so we know what could happen. And so I think, we know, like Don was saying, we didn't know some of this to the extent when we were backed into a corner 5-6 years ago, and we were backed into a corner and didn't know. We now know. So how do we address what we know? I think that's something that I'm struggling with. I was going to say this last night, but I was afraid that if I did, we would have been here till midnight. But I think people who are hoping that the Trump administration will stop this, I think are, maybe they will, and I hope so, but I would not be betting my house on it. When we first started this, the Republicans and the Democrats, for two different reasons, were strongly in favor. And a lot of the large companies that are still going to bid on this, if the federal government or the state government is willing to put tax credits out and they can make a lot of money, they're still going to want to do this. And so I think some of this will still go forward. And I think politically it'll just be tagged on to Biden and the Democrats. It'll just be like, well, tough luck. They did this to you. And so I don't have as much hope that politically this is just going to stop short. I really don't. So.
Don?
I think that we really need to get the point across that the entire island is a historic landmark and a historic district. And there are not other places that are like this, that had the pristine night sky that we had. And I would invite these people to come here and see it, that are in charge of the historic aspects of this. And then, as I said earlier, assessed residential value of all the property on Nantucket, excluding commercial and open space, is almost $35 billion. If we see a real estate impact from this, if you want to try and quantify it, we're not talking about $150,000 or $150 million. We're talking about billions of dollars potentially. And we're just at the beginnings of how this is visually impacting. It's going to get much worse as more of these get built. We should be asking, unequivocally that they get moved so that we can't see them. That definitely the lighting needs to get addressed. They should not be on consistently. They're larger than they should be. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're really, the offer from BOEM for mitigation is really insulting in terms of what we're actually facing, and that's not even getting far into the sea life and the environmental impacts.
Some of the comments about height and distance and height and putting some parameters on that, I think those were reasonable asks. I think that's, and so I'm back to how do we determine what we have in our, in the draft and what we've heard last night, how do we synthesize that and put it together? What's the process for that?
So there's a meeting tomorrow at noon, and we will be bringing everything to that conversation, essentially.
Okay.
I don't intend we'll leave anything off in terms of trying to emphasize the breadth and depth of the impact. Again, just as a reminder, this is a conversation about mitigation. That's the stage we're at. So.
Madam Chair, just to clarify for the public, not a public meeting, but a meeting that you have, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're ready to take a final vote until you have those conversations tomorrow based on all of the stuff that we've said tonight and everyone else said last night.
Yeah. So tomorrow, we'll be bringing this, it'll be a discussion. And then, Will, what happens after that?
Well, BOEM has a duty to consider the message that the town delivers. We'll have to discuss next steps with BOEM when we meet.
Yeah. So we'll learn more tomorrow. And we'll bring that back at our next meeting.
And I'm assuming, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That we're going to discuss more litigation options again in executive session, which is where we need to do that.
Yeah. Yes, any appeals.
In regard to not necessarily South Coast wind, but all the other aspects of the wind landscape.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Will. Appreciate
Thank
your
you. Good night.
coming on so late.
Oh, my pleasure. Good night.
Okay. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, committee reports? All quiet? Okay. Our favorite part.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everyone out there, for paying attention and listening to the board meeting tonight. Have a good night.